Well, hello, Nicole, and welcome to the Rebuilding My Health Radio podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today to share your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and really looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me as well. So let's kind of go back to when your health challenges first began, which really was from the beginning. So what, what did that look like for you?
Oh gosh, well, the running joke in my family is that I really did exhibit a tummy ache from birth. And the joke is that my mom consumed so much Mylanta when she was pregnant with me that resulted in my fair skin, which is kind of one of my trademark looks. But also just, being a very colicky baby, not really taking to foods too well, having digestive symptoms and just general issues from, yeah, just being a few weeks old. And, given the fact that that was in the early to mid 80s, doctors really kind of wrote it off as it's just IBS. That was the diagnosis that I received from a really young age up until 30. But yeah, it's kind of I'm the family joke of Nicole has tummy troubles, but I have since learned to embrace it, and it's now kind of becoming part of my career, which is crazy but really cool.
Right, right. Yeah, which is how so many people get into the health field. So,
Totally. Yeah.
yeah, which makes you an empathetic practitioner for
Mhm.
sure.
Yes, I know the pain so very well. Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, and doctors were basically just saying it's IBS. Any
Mhm.
recommendations for how to make it better or anything to try?
Yeah, again, like because it was so long ago and there was really no data, no really functional approach like we have today, doctors really kind of just shrugged their shoulders and said, well, it's clearly something that you've inherited from your mostly my mother's side. My dad's side also has a sensitive stomach as well. But they really kind of took the approach of let's lay off dairy. When that didn't work, they kind of shrugged their shoulders again and said, well, there are some kind of new antispasmodic medicines we can try. And so from a young age, it was just every so often, whenever I would have a flare up and go into the doctor, it was a here, try this, here, try this, here, try this, here, try this. And, none of them really had like a lasting impact. Looking back, knowing what I know now, and I know we'll dig into that into this episode, I do know mental health is so closely tied to the gut. 90%
Mm,
of our serotonin's made in the gut. And
right.
I think that relationship between me being sick so young and so frequently, just never knowing if it was going to, give me problems at a sleepover or a dance recital. I think that just kind of created this cycle of anxiety, more stomach
Mhm.
issues. And
Yeah.
again, back in the 80s and the 90s, doctors just kind of said, look, IBS is probably for them the easiest diagnosis to give without doing a lot of testing and really getting into like the nitty gritty of what could be going on in the gut. And it wasn't until maybe 10, 15 years ago that the conversation really started to normalize around the brain gut connection. And let's really
Mhm.
understand what could be driving some of these gut issues along with a root cause discussion. And so, yeah, from a young age, like I said, up until 30, it was like, here, try this, maybe go see a therapist. Sorry, that's just your lot in life. Those are your genes.
Right.
And, with so many people in my family struggling with this, I just kind of reached a tipping point when I thought, yeah, this just isn't quality of life for me anymore.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
just constant pain and stress and health anxiety. And so that's when I just decided to say thanks, but no thanks to the doctors that kept telling me the same thing on a loop. And I kind of went down a different direction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what were those first steps that you took kind of outside of conventional medicine?
Goodness. Well, I would say it was around 30 when I woke up to the fact that I really was that living definition of the Einstein quote. I think it's the insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. I'd done it so many times. I just thought, okay, well, I need to look and see what else is out there. And so I had several people in my life that had explored acupuncture. At that point, I think my mom had, and some of our family friends were into more Eastern approaches.
Mhm.
And so I looked at acupuncture for the first time in my early 30s, and it started to kind of alleviate some of those symptoms that were so acute. And so from there, that kind of led me down a path to chiropractic, which was also quite beneficial. And then in the last few years, I've really turned a corner into more somatic therapies. So reflexology and Reiki. I met an incredible cellular release therapist about a year ago. And that modality is really great for kind of uncovering a lot of the long-term stress, anxiety, pain that we hold in our physical cells, because the physiology is just, it's so intricately tied to, what we experience in our mind, body, soul. It's all there. So that was a hypnotic approach that I discovered. And so being put under hypnosis and kind of working through all of the past, trauma with a big T, trauma with a little t, health issues, relationship issues, uncovering a lot of that and getting that out of my cells also had a pretty significant impact on my gut too. So
Wow.
all of that's to say, I dabbled in a lot, and, things would have a positive impact and feel really, really great. And then I would kind of downward spiral a little bit a few months down the road. And that kind of went on for a few years of like, I know I'm making progress. I know that I'm seeing some results, but I know I can feel so much better. And, that's when I had my epiphany about 6 months ago.
Yeah. So how did you, tell us about the epiphany and kind of
Yeah.
like, what brought you to that?
So I hit what I would love to say is my most famous rock bottom, if we can call it that. But all good things. I had a lot of really exciting life changes about a year ago. I made the decision to move from Texas to Colorado. I was a lifelong born and raised Dallas girl, and kind of reached my limit being in the South. I'd been there and I'd done that. And I decided to up and solo move across country to Colorado. And at that same time, I had recovered from a few surgeries, which I know we'll get to in a little bit. Between the surgery recovery, the move, starting a new stressful job in corporate America, which I had kind of done this dance for 15 years, climbing the ladder in corporate America and just being perpetually stressed. All those things came to a head. Really good life changes, really exciting, but my body just said, no, girl, we've had enough. Like, we need to take it down a notch. It's too much. And that's when I kind of hit a tipping point with my gut.
Wow. Just, yeah. And I mean, more than 30 years of not of this, it's kind of
Mhm.
like you're just so fed up. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you uncover the causes behind your IBS?
So there had been a lot of things that had happened to me over the years. And when I went to my GP, my gastroenterologist, great Western trained doctors, they looked at my symptoms, for example, some of them being rashes, petechial rashes throughout my body, white coating on my tongue, a lot of itchiness, along with my long litany of IBS symptoms. They took a look at those and just said, this falls under the category of IBS. Well, when I hit my bottom of being overloaded and burned out and stressed out 6 months ago, all of those symptoms came back with a vengeance. And that's when you could say divinely, stumbled upon some functional medicine practitioners on Instagram that had an amazing array of information about SIBO and Candida and leaky gut and parasites. And just opening up my eyes to that world at that time, which again was so perfectly timed, I was able to completely shift directions, work with different practitioners, and do some tests to identify that, yes, I indeed did have an overgrowth of fungus and bacterial infections and leaky gut. I wasn't digesting food at all. And the root of that was parasites. That was the big driving factor that I was not only diagnosed with, but I'm continuing to cleanse from, is just a lifetime of exposure to everything in our environment, coupled with stress, which parasites love. And so I've been on this journey for about 6 months, healing from those diagnoses, but also taking some herbal supplements to get the dysbiosis in my gut cleaned out.
Nice, nice. So did parasites actually show up on lab testing? Because I know sometimes they don't. Okay, they didn't.
They did
Got it.
not. They didn't. And so because I tested positive for Candida and leaky gut in particular, along with my other symptoms that I had, the couple of practitioners that I had been working with at the time said, "Oh, we're 100% certain you have parasites," which I thought, well, that's kind of a stretch. But once I learned more about them, everyone on this planet has parasites. It's really just a matter of, are your symptoms exhibiting to suggest that you have an imbalance where the good and the bad bacteria in your gut is completely imbalanced?
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked that question, what about testing? And they said, it's very hit or miss when it comes to stool sampling. And the reason why is that, you're basically catching your body. It's a snapshot in time. You're catching a glimpse of what may or may not be in that sample. But what parasites can do is they can lay eggs into your tissue. They can lay eggs all throughout your body, and it's not really just confined to the gut. And so they said, while testing could show that you have parasites, we just want to operate from the standpoint of assuming that you do, and taking you down this protocol to heal the existing issues that you've tested positive for, but then also kind of bringing your gut back to balance.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I said, okay, well, if we're not going to test for it, I'd really love to know, because I love data. I love getting answers. And they said, okay, well, then we'll teach you how to do your own stool sampling. And that's what I did.
Right. Yeah, which I mean is a form of testing, right?
It is 100%. Yes.
Yeah.
So, and it was great timing because it was in parallel with me changing career tracks and deciding that my passion was in health coaching. I had derived so much value from the health coaches that I had been working with that I thought, what better way to heal myself while also kind of going down the road to healing others. And so the learning my body in different ways happened at the same time that I was in that course and learning so much about the human body. So I just feel like it's been a fun 6-month ride of being back to school while also taking that approach of learning my body in a completely different way than I ever knew it before.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what the protocol looks like, what you're taking and how long it is. And
So back when I was really sick 6 months ago, I was put on a Cellcore protocol. And I'm not sure how familiar your listeners are with it, but it's a pretty high intensity protocol that can address a variety of issues. But I did a parasite protocol, which involved several months of taking multiple supplements multiple times a day, at the same time getting rid of a bunch of foods from my diet. So I had to say goodbye to sugar, which I had really limited for quite some time, but any existing sugar was feeding Candida that I already had. So I had to get rid of 100% of sugar, gluten, which I was already mostly gluten-free, but had to be pretty regimented, alcohol, nightshades, the list goes on. So I had to be under a pretty restrictive diet for about 2-3 months in tandem with that protocol, just to ensure that I was really getting, for lack of a better term, the best bang for my buck, but
Mhm.
getting my
Yeah.
gut back to a place of stasis as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
And so after that period of time, I've eased back to doing a full moon cleanse, which is when parasites are the most active. Little fun tidbits. Um, Around the full moon is when our melatonin drops and serotonin increases. And guess what parasites love to munch on? Serotonin.
Serotonin.
Serotonin. So it's,
Who knew? Wow.
who knew? It's a fun fact, but yeah. So if anyone ever experiences symptoms around the full moon, and they don't necessarily have to be gut related, it can be rashes, irritability, depression, anger, sadness, again, because they love to munch on our melatonin or on our serotonin.
Mhm.
It can cause just complete havoc, not just for us physically, but also mentally, emotionally.
Mhm.
And so the approach that I've taken with the people that I'm working with is to really be on kind of a lower dose for the weeks out of the month, not the full moon, and then ramp it up during like a 5-day span when the parasites are most active, because then you
Mhm.
can get rid of them and detox at the same time from everything that they
Mhm.
hold on to. And as you know, and so many others probably know, it's really not just the bug, it's what the bug loves. And they love mold and heavy metals and bacteria and virus. And so once they're killed off, they release. And then we have to
Um,
make sure that we can, detox properly. So I also
right.
worked with a few practitioners and health coaches to make sure that my body was primed for all of that, to kind
Mhm.
of get rid of not just the bug, but what the bug was holding on to.
Right. That's so interesting. And I haven't heard anybody kind of explain that before, that the bug is holding on to this other stuff. And it's kind of releasing some toxins as you're killing them
Mhm.
off. So yeah, I mean, and there's other important stuff, that like, such as drainage, right? Making sure that your
Yes.
body is, kind of moving those toxins
Mhm.
through. So yeah, I'm sure your protocol included that kind of stuff.
Yes, drainage prep is a big one. And that's part of what the Cell Core product line has. You start off with that month of ensuring that your pathways are open, you can detox properly. So, along with taking supplements, I was also in a sauna 4 times a week, sometimes five, just to ensure that, the plastics and the heavy metals that we can't release through, urine in our bowels, release through sweat. So I was sweating. I was doing a lot with my diet to also kind of up the number of bowel movements I was having a day. Sleep's a big one too, because, and also during the full moon, I mean, what do parasites do? They can impact our sleep as well. And so
Yeah.
I was taking a couple of supplements to make sure that I was in the process of the detoxing and the healing, getting as much sleep as possible, and the most deep REM sleep that I could, to kind of also
Mhm.
help with, the healing from head to toe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So, as you have, and you've done multiple kind of parasite protocols at this point, what have you seen in terms of your symptoms improving, kind of body wide?
Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can get through this answer without crying. I'm gonna try. It's just, it's been the most pivotal change I've ever experienced, really. And I kind of thought this is going to really help my gut and my digestion. And believe me, it has. It has helped my gut immensely. I'm able to retain nutrients that parasites have basically been feeding off of for the better part of 3 decades. And that has such a ripple effect. It has a domino effect on all aspects of health. And I think I really discounted that when I started the cleanse. I just don't think I knew, how
Mhm.
significant of a change this could be. And so, these giant petechial rashes that I've had on my body for 10 to 15 years are starting to fade. And my mood is elevated. I mean, I've gotten rid of so many very large parasites at this point that it's pretty clear that they're no longer feasting on my serotonin like they have been for such a long time. Energy, like I said, mood, but what goes along with that is just this complete sense of calm, because, you know, with parasites depleting the GABA in our body, they are oftentimes a root cause of anxiety. And I come from a long lineage of women, especially, who have tummy troubles and anxiety. And so to see the improvement there, I mean, it's completely, it's night and day, and it's absolutely incredible. At the same time, it's both infuriating that not enough is being discussed about it, but also it's motivating to help to kind of be the change, to bring the awareness and to help educate people about parasites being such a huge root cause behind so many symptoms that people experience on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, absolutely. So important. And I imagine your digestive stuff has dramatically improved as well.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
I mean, before the cleanse, I was always looking for a bathroom. Had a challenging time, you know, planning trips, because if I didn't really feel comfortable with the food that was going to be there, it just always brought on this degree of anxiety. And, you know, my digestion, I've always kind of, well, before the cleanse, operated with just this like general gurgle, discomfort, nausea all day, every day. That's just been how I've lived. And now it's like, I almost have to stop myself sometimes and go, what doesn't feel right? Oh, that's right. Oh, my stomach's calm. It's just, it's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Wow, to have a calm stomach and a calm mind or mood, all together after like more than 3 decades of turmoil.
Absolute
I can
turmoil.
imagine. Yeah. It's just incredible. Yeah.
They say, like, I guess my new tagline is going to be better late than never. I mean, it would have been nice to get to the root of this when I was younger, but, you know, we can only fault medicine and progress for, you know, where it is at the time. And the 80s and the 90s were a time of just low fat, high sugar diets, which probably fed a lot of the issues that we all faced in autoimmunity. And, you know, just to kind of see the difference between then and now, living in a world that promotes a lot more functional conversation, is really hopeful. And it makes me feel hopeful that there can be a solution for other people that are feeling how I was feeling.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And education is a huge part of that. And you're doing your part to educate on that. Because it's not that well known, not that talked about. And I think most people have the impression that it's, you know, it's just foreign travel, perhaps people who've done like exotic foreign travel. And so which, you know, happens for sure. That you know, is one of the I guess, entry portals, but
it is. And I think like what I learned along this journey was, yes, that's definitely a driving factor, foreign travel, but even just what's in our air and in our water, even our filtered water, they're a part of life. I mean, they're a living organism and they're not to be feared. That's, I think, my biggest takeaway is parasites as a standalone organism should never be feared. They're important to an extent, but the problem is when overgrowth happens and there's that imbalance and various factors just cause them to go haywire and grow and kind of overtake our system. So I mean, the general guidance is if you have pets, if you eat fruits, vegetables, if you even have a not so great diet, it doesn't matter what we're eating, we're always going to come into contact with them. So, how can we limit our, exposure, but then also kind of offset what they could do to our body through cleansing and detoxifying?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so interesting. All right. So Nicole, I want to go down another slightly different path here
Yes.
with your health story, because it is such an important part of your history. Um, so you have a history of female cancers, which is really, really significant. So kind of tell us what that looked like, what your risks were, and kind of some of the steps that you've had to take as a result of that.
Definitely, yes. So I have a lot of risk on my mom's side, so my maternal side, many women going back to several generations, but then also like second cousins of mine, aunts of mine. Two of my mom's three sisters have been diagnosed with breast cancer. And so despite the fact that we've done a lot of genetic testing, we don't test positive for the BRCA gene, which is kind of the most widely known gene that drives a lot of those cancers. But based upon my maternal side, but also my paternal, there's some female cancer there along with colon and pancreatic. All of that kind of creates a risk profile for me that after I got tested several years ago, came back with about a 45% chance of being
Yeah.
diagnosed with either ovarian or breast cancer,
Wow.
which was pretty staggering, I think.
Yeah, that's hard to hear.
Yeah, seeing those
Yeah.
numbers at a time when also, because of my family history, I started to get mammograms in my 20s,
Mhm.
which I think is scary for any young woman who is in that waiting room surrounded by older women who are going through treatment. That's just, it's a scary thing to deal with. And I know, just like we had talked about a minute ago with my general anxiety that I've had my whole life, that didn't help. So it just kind of planted the seed for me of, I've seen two of my aunts go through this, a lot of other people that I have not even met, but in my family. Am I going to be next? Am I going
Mhm.
to be the one to receive a diagnosis next? And so I had started to kind of think in my late 20s, early 30s, what does it look like to take a preventative, proactive approach here? And so that's why I made the decision to have a few surgeries over the last 18 months.
Yeah. All right. Would you share which surgeries you had?
Yes. So I had a bilateral double mastectomy in October of 2021 with immediate reconstruction. And then a saplingectomy. For the life of me, can never pronounce it. Starts with an S. I had my fallopian tubes out. That's what I say.
Got it.
And that was 2 months after. So, well, 3 months after. So it was October of 21, and then January of 22, I had my tubes removed. And based on the knowledge that I had received from my OBGYN and the breast surgeon that I was working with pretty closely, was, to minimize your risk profile by getting your breast removed is one thing. But if you really want to alleviate the anxiety and the constant testing, I mean, I was going every 6 months for mammograms and ovary checks and cervix. I mean, it was all consuming. They said, this is one way that you can reduce your risk profile, but if you really want to be proactive, the majority of what we're seeing today as far as ovarian cancer is it starts in the fallopian tubes. And so we had a lot of conversation around, what does it look like to be in my late 30s? Not really sure about kids, but leaning towards not having them. What can I do to be proactive without driving myself into menopause tomorrow? And so that was when we kind of came to the conclusion that to remove my tubes would allow me to get pregnant if I so chose with IVF, but would offset that risk that it just was starting to tick upwards, as I have seen so many people in my life over the last few years too, young women be diagnosed with breast cancer and ovarian cancer and cervical cancer. It seems like it's a bit of an epidemic. And so those two surgeries, alongside everything I talked about before with the moving and the jobs and it all just kind of created this perfect storm of, I think, my gut saying, we've been through a lot and we need to make a change. So all of that's to say, to come back to the surgery part, I'd spent so much of my 20s just being scared, my early 30s too, like borderline debilitating health anxiety. And the more that I would see other women my age be diagnosed and some die, I thought, okay, I don't want to do anything too drastic, but at the same time, I don't know how to walk around on this planet knowing what I know about my risk, knowing what the data looks like. And I don't know if I could ever forgive myself for not doing something should the day come that I do receive a diagnosis. And so I think having all of those conversations with myself, really leaning into my intuition, kind of brought me to the conclusion that if I don't do this now, I don't know what the future looks like. And I really want to live a life that's free of that overwhelming anxiety.
Yeah, totally understandable. And such difficult decisions, really, when it comes down to it. I mean, anything that sort of like helped you make those decisions?
A lot of introspection. I think I've always been a pretty intuitive person, not to get too woo-woo, but I am a Cancer moon, and Cancer moons tend to have some psychic abilities. And, I've always felt this really intense pull towards do everything you can with the data that you have, or else. Not to sound, too, I don't know, deep, dark, and scary, but I think leaning into my intuition and really thinking about, what does a life look like if you don't? What does that picture look like? Can you deal with the anxiety? Can you deal with the testing every 3 to 6 months sometimes? That frequency. I think I came to a place within myself when I had to tune out the outside world after I received all of the important data and guidance. I had to tune out the outside world and really think deeply and meditate about it and feel like I was truly listening to myself and to my gut. Also talking about gut stuff, but listening to the intuition part of my gut, which was saying to me, just, this is your best bet. And for me, I think it made the most sense. And I feel really grateful. I feel really grateful that I was able to, go down that path with the information that I had, because I think it really did kind of open up my life to just a lot more possibility without having to be reminded of that constantly.
Yeah, it was, I'm sure, just like this weight on you all the time, especially with the constant reminders. Okay, I've got to go for another mammogram or another check. Yeah.
And the false positives, because when you have dense breast tissue, it's like, oh, well, come back in. And I had a couple scares in my late 20s, one in particular where they had me do an ultrasound, and it was really starting to look like it had the potentiality of being a tumor. And it was a span of 20 minutes from the time that I got the result of the mammogram, because they held me. They would hold me there to do the mammogram, and then if needed, do an ultrasound because I was higher risk. And just that 20-minute period of thinking this could be it was enough to send me to that place of like, check, please, like, I'm done.
Yeah.
we can't live like that forever. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, and thank you for sharing that, because I think I'm sure there are quite a lot of people who are in a similar risk or have a similar risk profile, and challenging to make those decisions, those
It is.
corrective preventive decisions. Yeah.
It is. And I'm such a big believer in bio-individuality too. I know that my decision was best for me, but it could very well not be the right decision for someone else. And so I think
Yeah.
that's when I feel like intuition is such a powerful gift, because we can just sit with what we feel like makes the most sense for us, what's going to lead to either a life of distress or a life of comfort. Only we know what we can manage, and only we
Mhm.
know kind of what our appetite for anxiety is. And so,
Mhm.
as solid as I felt in my decision, I also know that, for other women out there that might have the BRCA gene, or, might have another risk profile that's similar, there are so many different steps that can be taken, just given what your appetite for, for that is as well. And so I'm a big believer
Right.
in that. Do what's right for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's gotta feel right, I
Yeah.
think, especially, yeah, something that major.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Nicole, you've been through so much, in the past year, and then a lifetime of other stuff. So what does your kind of maintenance routine look like now to stay healthy? What are some things that you are just doing like daily or regularly to optimize your health?
Oh goodness. Well, I won't say it's a long list, but
Yeah.
I like to dabble in a lot of different things to kind of maximize benefit. And
Mhm.
so for me right now, my priority just lies in feeling the best that I can, that's humanly possible, for being on the cusp of 40, knowing that I have so much life left. But also knowing that, like, I've done a little bit to my body along the way. So I'm mindful that for me, keeping stress under control is, I think, the biggest challenge, but the biggest
Mhm.
focus,
Right.
because, I've had 15 years prior to shifting careers, 15 years in very stressful jobs. I was a classically trained ballerina growing up, which had its own stress and
Yeah.
the implications of that on my mind and also body. And, now I've arrived at a place where I am still taking supplements. Obviously, I'm eating a really clean diet. I'm prioritizing community. I think that's
Mhm.
something that is so understated in health. Loneliness, and we all know over the last 3 years, has been just so detrimental. And so, really building and continuing to develop really great relationships.
Mhm.
And then, like I said, with limiting stress, keeping under control, acupuncture, massage, sauna. I move every single day, even if
Mhm.
it's just getting a walk outside. I think that's been really, really key and critical. I'm sure that there are so many other
Yeah.
things, but
Right,
those
right.
those are the highlights. And, being now in the health space and being really into biohacking, I think there's just so much cool research around, like hot cold exposure, red light
Mhm.
therapy is really exciting and interesting. And I'm starting to work with my clients on some of those,
Mhm.
to really kind of help with symptoms, but also maximize, energy, help with sleep,
Mhm.
to really ensure that, like, as a holistic being, we're feeling the best that we can.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, tell us more about the career change that this inspired, and who you're helping and with what types of issues.
Yes, I'd love to. I'd love to. So, around my turning point of couldn't do 80-hour weeks anymore in corporate America, I realized that being a holistic health coach, wellness coach, was the perfect shift for me.
Mhm.
I think the highlight of my corporate career has always been the coaching aspect. So even before I decided to make this shift 6 months ago, I've been coaching and mentoring people in a variety of aspects and parts of their life. So I've done a lot of career coaching, relationship coaching as well. It was just that turning point that made me realize, okay, I think health is really where my passion lies. So I received my certification from IIN, which is Institute of Integrative Nutrition and Health Coaching.
Mhm.
just wrapped up. And I have launched my solo practice called Working Through It.
Love
And
it.
thank you. And I think as I've really done a lot of inner work, but I'm also starting to work with clients too on their challenges, the biggest focus areas that I'm really digging into right now is gut health, clearly, and then also stress management. And I think the two really go hand in hand. Once we can get to the underlying issues that might be plaguing someone with their gut, also with stress, there can be this really awesome cascade effect that occurs in all aspects of life. And so I'm pretty recently launched, but starting to take on some clients, and it's been so rewarding and so exciting to take the knowledge that I've obtained and share it with people, especially because so much of this, parasites namingly, it's not widely discussed. And so, if that's going to be the hill I die on, I'm pretty psyched about it and excited and just really ready to help as many people as possible.
Right. Yeah. And I know that your empathy and intuition on top of the knowledge just brings so much to help folks. So,
Yeah.
well, tell folks where they can find and follow you.
Yes. So I am most active on Instagram. My handle is nle.84. My website is NicoleLavery.com. And you can reach out, email me at Nicole@NicoleLavery.com.
Right. Just as a wrap-up question, maybe what advice would you give to others who might be experiencing some, particularly, I guess, gut issues who are not getting answers?
I think first and foremost, just take a deep breath and know that you are not alone at all. You're not. And this is something that can definitely be worked through with the right people around you. So I would suggest finding someone to talk to about it, whether it be a health coach, a therapist, just for starters, alongside a functional medicine practitioner. If it's available to you, there are a lot out there that are doing really great work. And so feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available to kind of give recommendations if you're in an area and not sure if there's a practitioner around. I love helping people make connections too. The networking is really, really cool part of what I do. So just know you're not alone. And a lot of this is reversible with the right approach and the right mindset. You can get to feeling a lot better than how you're feeling now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you just have to have the right guidance and the right
Yes,
information about your body. So
definitely.
well, Nicole, thank you so much for coming on to share your story. You've been through so much, especially in the past, year and a half or so, 2 years. So just want to acknowledge all the work that you've done and all the progress you've made. And now you're building a beautiful life in Colorado.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. And if I have to leave on one final note, just want to tell people that even when you think that there's no solution, take a moment and take a deep breath and know that a lot of times there can be. And so to just keep the hope alive, because once you're in the right mindset of change, some beautiful things can come from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, mindset is certainly key for sure. So, all right. Well, thank you, Nicole. It was such an honor and a pleasure to capture your story and chat with you.
Thank you so
Take care.
much. Take care.
Yeah,
Bye.
you too.